Hey everyone, before I get into the review, I just wanted to let you know that we will be doing these smaller reviews more regularly on the Key Issues podcast channel. We don't think that the main channel is the place to post these, as we sort of have our go-to series for the main channel, and we'd like to get more opinionated stuff over here on the podcast channel. So let us know if you like these mini reviews that aren't in an entire podcast, as we do consume a lot of media, video games, movies, TV, books that we wouldn't necessarily discuss at length during the podcast. So let us know if you'd like more of these, and with that being said, let's get into the review. The Fallen Star by Claudia Gray is the third adult novel in the High Republic era of Star Wars and acts as the final piece of the Phase 1 puzzle. I finished it last week and have had a lot of time to think about the triumphant and tragic events of the book. This will be a spoiler-free review, so you shouldn't worry about any major story elements being ruined for you here. First, I'd like to mention how brisk the pacing was without being too breakneck. At times, especially during the second half, I thought the previous book in the trilogy, if you want to call this a trilogy, was a bit fast for my liking, although that may change upon rereading The Rising Storm, as the events were so chaotic I never really got the chance to breathe. But that was also likely the point based on what was happening in the story. Anyway, in the Falling Star, we move along quickly, but still get more downtime to process the events alongside our characters, as some of them have time to sit and think about the events around them as they're happening, and even those who don't have the time to think can't help but reflect a bit. Claudia does a superb job letting us know what's going on in each character's head as the events are unfolding, and as I said, things are unfolding fast. The most interesting choice she makes is how the chapters are composed. Events are happening, and as those events occur, we get POVs for each character the event impacts as it's happening. No single chapter is dedicated to a single character or group. We're constantly bouncing around between the cast throughout the Starlight Beacon as the events are unfolding, and get to experience their struggles in quote-unquote real time, or as close to real time as you can get while reading. I really appreciated this choice as compared to, say, Light of the Jedi, where we were left with constant cliffhangers and then we had to wait chapters to see what happened previously. Here, we're covered with every major character in each chapter, more or less. While I love the Light of the Jedi and Soul's choices there made sense for that story, Gray choosing to have the POV move from one character to another so quickly really lent to the claustrophobic feeling in the story and that feeling of dread which was looming over the Jedi especially. The sense of dread is built so effectively not because we're jumping from one character to the next and we're getting different perspectives on it. I mean, that of course lends to that sense of dread, but we're back to the original character very quickly. So we get their thought process throughout the entire story, and I thought that just worked excellently. There is something on the Fallen Star which is hampering the Jedi's ability to use the Force, which makes for an interesting story. How will the Jedi possibly save the day when their greatest ally, the Force, is unresponsive, especially considering how much of a role the Force played in Light of the Jedi, where all the Jedi came together to prevent tragedy, or in The Rising Storm, where Elzar Mann tapped into the dark side to do some good, or so he thought, and that was supposed to be a triumphant and simultaneously tragic moment for the character. But the Force played a major role in the first two novels of this series. Here, the Jedi struggled to do anything with the Force, let alone the great feats we'd seen in prior installations, and seeing the reactions of each Jedi who were collectively struggling was illuminating. Some responded with fear, doubt, anger, pride, but others, hope, strength, and faith that the Force would return to them and see them out of the danger safely. I loved how some characters' faults were exposed to themselves without the Force to lean on, how they managed to fill the void left behind by the Force, and their struggles to come to grips with who they really were without it. And speaking of Elzar Mann, a fan favorite, returns as a main character within The Fallen Star, who is curiously left off of the cover. His journey to reconcile with the mistakes he made during the Rising Storm is where we begin in The Fallen Star, and it's really how we end. I love the trajectory of his journey thus far, being a sort of insert or analog for Anakin Skywalker, at least in my opinion. An immensely talented Force user, not used to playing by all the rules, struggling with love, attachments, and the dark side during the High Republic, but finding nothing but support among his fellow Jedi instead of the admonishment and sideways glances that Anakin received during the Clone Wars. Elzar was very comfortable with going to his fellow Jedi for help, whereas Anakin was hesitant most of the time, and I think that shines a light on the differences between the Jedi of the High Republic and the Jedi of the Clone Wars. The Jedi being at their brightest in this era really shows when the galaxy seems at its darkest, and The Fallen Star makes no exception. Sure, the Jedi fail occasionally, but they are there to pick each other up and move forward. How this might change in the coming phases will be interesting to see, as we know how dogmatic and stuck in their ways the Jedi will become. Bel Zettifar, who has been through tragedy after tragedy, remains a hopeful and optimistic character in each appearance, and I love that about him. It's very consistent, and I hope that the character never breaks. Claudia brings something new to Bel that I hadn't got from Scott or Sol, and she seamlessly weaves Bel, along with the other primary figures of the High Republic, into her story, while still introducing us to new characters and building upon the foundation of her young adult entry into the dark. While Reath Silas doesn't make any major appearance in The Fallen Star, the crew of the vessel does. While I liked these characters in Into the Dark, I've grown to love them throughout their other appearances, and especially in this entry. Affy, Leox, and Geode play major roles within The Fallen Star and don't feel forced into the story at all. Their reason for being part of the story is natural, they work well with the Jedi characters seen in the story, and even have their own little side story and rivalry with a new character who is introduced here to great effect. Marchion, or Marchion, however you want to pronounce it, appears again and plays a much more major antagonistic role than he did in The Rising Storm, at least in my opinion, but he's very passive in this story, content to sit and watch as his months of planning comes to bear down on the Jedi. You see this from his perspective as someone who has already won, or at least thinks that they have. This is very different from what we'd seen before, as he was always actively trying to sabotage the Jedi at every turn. Here, he's sitting back and enjoying the view. Literally. The Fallen Star sticks the landing for the High Republic Phase 1, despite all that happened in The Rising Storm, how terribly that story ended, and I mean, it was a good ending, but horrible for the Jedi themselves. Here, Claudia does an excellent job of planting seeds of hope throughout the story, and it culminates with effective payoff after effective payoff after effective payoff. Whether I felt tremendous joy or utter despair at these various moments differed, and I was audibly reacting at points which I almost never do when reading a story. Claudia was at her best toward the end of the story when she was really pulling at the heartstrings. I've really come to care about almost every major character in the High Republic, and that's a credit to the entire creative team who have woven together an intricate, large-scale Star Wars story in an era that we've never explored before, and despite the lack of Sith for the Jedi to fight, the Drengir and the Nihil have been more than good enough as enemies of the light. As someone who hasn't really gotten into Star Wars Legends at all, the High Republic is a breath of fresh air in the Star Wars universe. It's all new, but familiar at the same time, and I couldn't recommend Phase 1 highly enough. If you're interested in diving into the High Republic, The Fallen Star isn't the place to start, as it is the finale of Phase 1, but it's a near-perfect ending, which left me wanting more. These major installments always seem to do that, and luckily, there's more right around the corner. So, again, I highly recommend this story. If you've been following the High Republic, you're gonna get everything that you want out of this book, and, I mean, maybe you'll get some stuff that you don't want, but realize that you needed. So I recommend picking it up, and if you haven't checked out the High Republic, I think you should get started on it. As I said, Phase 1 has just come to an end, and it's a great time to jump in, right before phase 2 starts. Thanks for watching this, everybody. We really appreciate it. Remember to like and subscribe, all that fun stuff, and let us know down in the comments what you'd like us to see review in the future. Video games, movies, TV, more books, stuff like that. We'd love to cover it for you guys. So let us know. And remember the motto, it's the High Republic over everything. And I'll see you guys next time.